everyone. Welcome to the Tea Fix podcast. I'm Leona Liu, here with my co-host, Geoff Norman. Geoff, how are you doing today?
Don't mind me, I'm just pouring things.
Geoff is making tea right now.
I'm currently making tea. Are you shocked?
Please don't be shocked, because this is a podcast
Please don't
about
be shocked.
tea.
You clicked on a tea podcast. You should be expecting that the person that's in the podcast is going to be making tea. And I'm really starting this off on a negative, angry tone. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I am also making tea. So what tea are you making?
I am currently making, you're going to be shocked by this, I am currently making ripe pu'er.
Oh, nice. And I am making a blend from Bee Fullers. It is a, oh my goodness. It is a...
What?
I know. It is...
A blend!
It's a blend from Bee Fullers, and it's a lavender gray. So Earl Grey with lavender petals. And
is this reverse day? Is this where you're having a tea that I would probably have, and I'm having a tea that you would normally have?
I mean, I don't know. What day is reverse day? Is that Wednesday? No. There is no such thing.
I didn't know there was a specific day that's considered reverse day.
No, I don't think there is. I think that's just in my mind. Which, yeah, we're good. There's no day.
Your mind is a scary place.
It's a dark cavern of scary thoughts. No. So this tea has just tiny bits of lavender in it, and it doesn't smell like, as you had mentioned previously, soapy. It's actually really nice and relaxing. So, yeah. I'm going to try it out.
I'm glad to be wrong, I guess.
Well, to be fair, the lavender you had mentioned is a different blend.
Yes.
From a different shop. That was...
a shop that will not be named.
Yes, we cannot say the name of the shop, though we did in episode 0. So, and a car alarm is going off right now, so I am so sorry, everyone. Oh, and it just stopped.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, nope, there's a podcast going on.
This is why that I don't have any windows open at the moment, because chances are there would be sirens going and possibly even fireworks noises. At least I would hope that they're firework noises and not something that would draw sirens normally.
Yeah, so all of my windows are closed right now, except I kind of live at a fairly busy intersection, so there's always things happening over here. Don't know why I talk like that for a second, but but anyways.
Oh.
So yeah.
Anyway, I had one other thing to share about the cooked pu'er I'm drinking. It's not just any cooked pu'er. It's not caked as you normally would. It's actually cooked pu'er, loose cooked pu'er that have been stuffed into a dried tangerine rind. So it's a chun pea cooked pu'er, and it's delicious.
Those are the best. Did you put some of the orange peels in while you were making it?
Heck yeah! What do you take me for, a charlatan?
No, I just wanted to know. That's all.
You were going to judge if I just used the pu'er.
I may have.
We're done.
Fine. I may have slightly have judged if you didn't, but so in terms of the orange peel, I've actually dried some of my own orange peel that I keep in a jar and can be used for cooking or for steeping tea.
Yeah, I just looked that up. I did not know that chun pea basically stands for dried orange peel. And that it was normally used in Chinese cooking as a seasoning thing.
Yeah.
I did not know these.
Yeah.
Yay, internet!
Yeah, it's a thing. So when you eat the cuties, save the peels. Dry them out, let them dry for a day, and then just put them in a jar. It's really nice, and it's interesting looking.
And they steep well, too.
Yep.
I mean...
Yeah, there's a lot of nice flavors. So,
right.
So Geoff, today you and I are going to be talking about all the different ways to make tea, and
Yep.
and we may or may not cover all the different ways because depending on the country and the region, there's so many different ways to make tea. So we may just cover a few of them in this episode. But we'll try to do our best
Yep.
to cover some ways that you and I make tea, and then other ways that that tea is made. So, so if I'm looking at, I guess we could start with just the most common way tea is made, or people can have tea, and that's if you go into the grocery store, and this is in the West anyways. If you go into a grocery store, you're going to see in the tea aisle a lot of boxes of the bagged tea. So this is tea in different tea bags, whether this is herbal or green. Geoff is not having not enjoying the tea bag topic, but
it's not fair of me to have that kind of reaction. I can have that reaction now that I've moved past that, but even I started in the world of the bag.
Yeah. So the tea bag, there's like a regular tea bag, and basically, it just removes the tea, and a lot of times the tea from the water, separates the tea from the water, and a lot of times the tea, unfortunately, is lower quality tea.
It's not just lower quality. It's the stuff on the factory room floor. I mean, we're talking less than Fanning's grade, less than CTC grade. We're talking dust.
Yeah.
I mean, dust is a grade. Dust should not be a grade on anything. If I had a report card and it said that my test was dust, I would be crying.
Right.
Nobody should be drinking dust, but go on.
Right, I agree. But there are these kind of newer packets now. They're kind of like silk packets.
Yep.
Like this, and
that's also a point of some contention too amongst some of the effete tea drinker types,
right?
Like myself.
Yeah, because I'm.
It's
an emotional topic.
I actually don't. I actually don't mind sachets as much. I mean, even though some people will claim that, you're basically steeping plastic still, and I would actually reckon that I don't taste a difference one way or the other. And at least in a sachet, more often than not, the tea is actually going to be broken leaf grade at the least.
Yep. Yep. And it's a lot of the times it is, and but it is one way to drink tea on the go, though there are other ways to do that as well. And then there are also empty filters that you can get, which you can fill with the tea of your choice, and it makes it for easy cleaning. But I don't prefer to use a tea bag or this type of filter, only because it, when it does get moist, it does kind of attach itself to the tea. It kind of clings to the tea, so it doesn't really allow the tea to kind of have the room it needs to release all its flavors.
It kind of clings like tea underwear.
Like a super needy...
like a needy ex.
Yes. They're just always there, clinging onto you, not allowing you to breathe.
You are a useless tea sachet. Go away.
I thought we talked about this. So that's the most common way in in the West that tea is drink. So, and another way that I think you and I both enjoy is grandpa style.
Yep.
And so I didn't know that this term was called grandpa style until fairly recently, because I just knew it as like drinking tea, like.
Well, and that's basically what it is. The blog that claims to have coined the term "grandpa style" is the Marshall N blog, which has been around forever.
Okay.
And I'm not one to doubt the author of Marshall N that he coined the term "grandpa style" because, again, he's been around forever.
Right.
And why not?
Yeah, I mean,
cares?
it's a nice name. And so what grandpa style is you take a teacup, so any type of teacup that you may have, and you just drop some tea in. There's no filter or no tea bag or anything like that. And then you just pour the water over the leaves, and then you let it steep, and then you drink the tea with the tea leaves inside of the cup. And
I do. Sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say, and a lot of times this is done with green tea. In China, this is very common with green tea. You just drop the green tea in, and they'll put the green tea in, and then it'll float to the top, and then it'll go back down to the bottom, and then and then you can just drink the tea. It kind of filters itself.
You see, I've tried it with green tea, both Japanese and Chinese greens, and not all the leaves decide to go to the bottom.
That's
they
true.
Kind of just want to stay on top, and it's kind of like drinking really pulpy orange juice. Something's just wrong.
But you did not choose the pulp option.
No, I've had better luck with oolongs that are ball rolled, like what we talked about in the last episode. Because when you grandpa style those, at first they start off floating, but as they gather more water, they expand and then just sink. And even if you get a leaf kind of going up to the, you can at least shoo it out of the way a lot easier than a smaller green tea leaf piece.
Right.
Now, the exception to that is a green tea, which I just had for the first time about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago at the time of this airing, I should say.
Okay.
And that's Taiping Ho Kui, which I don't know why I'd skipped it for so many years, but when I finally had it, I mean, the leaves are huge. I mean, they're basically like the size of my my index finger.
Yep, and sometimes they're even longer. The Taiping Ho Kuis.
Yeah,
they're like sometimes they're super
it's crazy.
Long.
Yeah, and when you steep those are like oolong leaves. You can just shove them out of the way and go back to drinking.
Yeah, exactly. So with grandpa style, like you had said, not all of the tea leaves drop to the bottom. So what? Well, when I'm in China anyway, what's usually done in terms of grandpa style is you just blow the tea leaves around. You're like, no, it's true. You just blow.
Dang it!
You blow them out of the way. So you're like, oh, look, there's like maybe 5 tea leaves floating at the top. I'll just blow them in the other, side of the other side of the cup, and then I'll just drink it.
Do you know what I'm picturing right now? I'm picturing like an old timey movie, and was like, you know how to drink your tea, don't you? You just pucker up and blow.
Yeah, so that's the most common style that I've seen in China anyway with grandpa style. And you said that you do it sometimes.
I do it sometimes. I don't do it as much as I used to. When I do something that's similar to grandpa style, it's usually with a travel mug. Something that has a catch at the end of it, like a net mesh that keeps the leaves from going in my mouth.
Yes.
There's also
nice.
there's a special cup also that I bought at World Tea Expo in 2016, which is called The Wall. It's done by uh, Boreal, I think is the company,
Okay.
and they do one that basically has only half of a filter cache, and the rest is basically just the normal cup, and then you put your leaves at the bottom and you drink, and that catch basically keeps the leaves from going in your
Oh,
mouth.
interesting.
So
Okay, so
you could
that's like
actually do
that's almost like a
a
to-go filter.
yeah, it's pretty similar to a to-go
Yeah.
filter. Yeah.
So I had shared this video in our Slack, and I know we're talking about Grandpa Style right now. There is a video. So this is kind of like Grandpa Style tea in, or even more so Gong Fu tea in, or just tea in general in pop culture.
Yeah.
So there's this Taiwanese pop star called Jay Cho, and he does a lot of music videos where he takes traditional Chinese Taiwanese culture and like does like raps, like he like raps about like like traditional, like, you know, old like old tea culture, or very artistic, like poetic things about a Chinese culture. So there's a video that he has where I actually recommend watching this video. It's quite interesting. It's he
Yeah,
sings.
I'm sorry. I know you posted it, and I
Oh no, it's
forgot to watch it.
no, it's fine. Um, it's him rapping about the tea that Grandpa makes. So like the traditional type of tea. So so he's dressed in traditional clothing, and he is rapping about tea. And he's talking about like the history of tea, and I'm like how I'm sitting on a mountain and there's like spring water, and like how the history of the tea, like the leaf dropped into the cup and it was so refreshing. So it's, if you're into interesting juxtapositions of traditional tea culture and pop culture, it's an interesting
Oh,
video to check out. So it's Jay
I'm
Cho,
all about the juxtaposition.
Grandpa's tea, if you want to check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's basically a pop song. If you listen to it, you wouldn't know that it's about the visuals and the sounds don't maybe match 100%, but it's an interesting thing to check out. So
That's I would watch the heck out of
yeah,
that and probably do the reshare. I mean, because if you notice, there really aren't a lot of tea memes out there,
there
and
aren't.
the ones that are made or found are reshared multiple times over because there's a meme, it has tea in it. There's a meme, it has tea in it.
I wonder if so there is a software where you can make your own. I mean, we could make our own memes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the best at making memes, but that made me think of the shirt you're wearing for a second. Is because I can't, from where the camera is, I can't fully see what shirt you're wearing, but yes, it is.
T-Rex.
The T-Rex shirt. So it's a T-Rex with a classy hat.
Yeah.
Holding
and a monocle.
And a monocle holding an English teacup.
Yep. And if I had been smarter in my attire, I would have also included a T-Rex mug that I also have, because my sister got me the shirt and the mug for my birthday, and I should have included that while we were talking about Grandpa Style, but you know, hindsight and 2020 and all that.
Yeah, I can tell you really regret that, Joe. Really feeling bad about that one. We could do it on the next episode where you can show the you have a lot of great t-shirts. T-shirts, get it?
I have a few, and I want more.
Yeah.
I want more.
So we have a tea bag, we have Grandpa Style. So in terms of what type of, how I usually make my tea, I have a lot of different things here, but I usually make tea in my kyusu.
I wish I owned a Kyusu, but I don't. So I'm a little jealous of you at the moment.
I was almost going to lift this above the camera and show everyone, but then I'm like, oh, I am making tea in here. Never mind. There is hot liquid in here.
Now, I was actually asking a friend of mine, Ricardo, who runs the wonderful blog, My Japanese Green Tea, exactly, because I don't know a whole lot about Kyusus, other than the fact that they're the standard, well, not the standard, but one of the standard teapots in Japan.
Yeah.
And he was saying that originally the side handle shape originally came from China and then made its way over to Japan, like a lot of things did.
Yeah.
And there's even a Kyusu variant that also exists in Korea that is a glazed version. I forget what that's called, and I wish I had looked that up. But
yeah, I think the Korean one it's a little higher, right? The height it's not as wide, and the height and the width are about the same. So it's a rounder. We're a Kyusu, so I'm just gonna. The Kyusu that I have is a little wider than it is tall.
Look at the cute little flowers.
I know, it's so cute. So Kyusus are usually used to make green tea, but I kind of break that rule, and I just enjoy using it because I like the side handle. It makes it's a really comfortable pour. And another great thing about a Kyusu is that, well, so I am making tea in this, but there, like, how do I show this? So inside of a Kyusu, there is a filter inside. So there's no need to have add a filter anywhere, and it's very easy to clean. I just rinse it out, and I don't, use soap or anything like that. But I do steep a variety of teas in the Kyusu, and it's probably only should be used for greens. But
does it have a filter on the inside?
Yep. Yeah. So inside the entire lining of the Kyusu, there's a filter inside. So I mainly use it because it's so convenient, and it just feels so good pouring from it. It's just really nice, and
it's sort of off to the side while you're holding it, so it feels kind of gangster when you're pulling your tea.
That's what I usually consider in terms of what I use to make tea. Do I feel gangster making this?
Does this make me feel more gangster than usual? Yes.
It does.
Purchased.
It doesn't take much, but even a little bit will help. A Kyusu it is. And then another way is gongfu, which is
my preferred method.
Yeah, so it's a more formal way, but so what are the steps that you usually use? I think you have a 3-step for your standard, right?
3-step, you'll probably see in the back display over there. Basically, I have the tray for when I make mistakes. I have the gaiwan.
Yeah.
And then after the gaiwan is done brewing, I have the chahai, which is the chahai.
Yeah.
And then I've got the actual serving cup. And because I'm a party of one, a tea party of one, the cup I'm using is just a full 6-ounce thing, and that actually is Sri Lankan and not Chinese at all.
You don't have to say that.
Well, that's to highlight the point that that gong fu it basically means to do something with skill, but to do it whichever way you want to. So there really is no distinct gong fu ceremony.
Yeah.
I mean, there are many different gong fu ceremonies, but pretty much the only thing that is universal across all gong fu prep traditions is the fact that you have to do multiple steeps, usually more leaf to less water, and then so on. Although I use less leaf because I'm a wuss.
Yeah. It's so much caffeine.
Yeah. And contrary to my tea drinking habits, I would rather use less caffeine when I can, even though I've had a lot so far already.
So I know right now you use the gaiwan pretty much exclusively when you make tea at home. So how did you first transition into a gaiwan? How were you making tea before you moved into using a gaiwan?
That's actually a really cool story. And I've told it before on my blog, but I'm just pouring out leaves so I can show you this particular gaiwan. This is the first gaiwan I ever received, and this was back in 2009, and it's an old sucker. It's got chips in it and everything. I remember I was at Smith Tea Maker, one of the shops I frequent in Portland, and the person who was running the bar at the time was their master blender, Tony Tellin. And I was explaining that I didn't like oolongs. So this was way back.
Wow. Times have changed.
Way back. Yeah, and I said, I don't really like oolongs. And he's like, well, you're probably not doing it right. And that's when he showed me a gaiwan for the first time. And this was his gaiwan, or one of his gaiwans that he used. Not only was it one of his original gaiwans, it was one of his original gaiwans that he used when he worked for Tazo.
Wow.
So it has a Tazo label embossed on the bottom of it. And he basically said, okay, you need to like oolongs properly. Yes. Here's a gaiwan.
Wow.
And
he gifted you a gaiwan.
The moment I started, he gave me a gaiwan, and I haven't looked back since, and it's been my preferred brew apparatus at home.
He gave you his personal gaiwan.
Well, one of his personal. I don't think it was like his absolute personal gaiwan. I mean, we're not that close.
Right, but I mean...
But I think he was just personally offended that I didn't like oolongs and was kind of like, dude, come on.
We need to save this guy. Give him a gaiwan.
Yeah. Give the guy a gaiwan.
Yeah. Let him figure out what oolong's all about. So, how were you making oolongs before the gaiwan?
Oh, the few times that I actually had oolongs, I was just putting them in a tea tumbler, grandpa style, and going to town and not concentrating or paying attention to how long I was brewing them for.
Okay. So you're just kind of letting them sit.
Yeah. Okay. And at the time, most of the oolongs that I'd had were like medium roast or heavy roast, and I didn't like that flavor profile. I didn't grow into that profile or an appreciation for that profile until later on down the line when I had a really sweet Da Hong Pao, which kind of made my palate do a complete 180.
Yeah. There's always...
It was a freaking religious experience.
Yeah, there's usually always that one tea that does it for you.
Yeah.
And for mine, for me, it was, well, I think we talked about this briefly, but mine was Tie Guan Yin.
Yep.
Yeah. And Gyokuro.
And Gyokuro.
Maybe that's what this Kyushu is all about. To remind me of those weird times when I liked...
So do you brew Tie Guan Yin in your Kyushu?
I do.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean,
do.
You're talking to a guy that uses Ceylon's steeper cup catches as his main drinking thing. Because as we've said, or as I said before, party of one over here.
So the Gongfu style, a lot of times it's with a... So you actually have it, when you do your like one-person Gongfu style tea, you have it on a tea tray, right?
Yep, back
like
there.
On a bamboo tea tray. And then what is sitting on the left of...
that's actually related to the gaiwan story. Because Smith Tea Maker didn't have a Gongfu service before, and they do now. And I believe they introduced it 2 years ago. I'd have to look at my blog again to
Yeah.
look at the timeline, but that that leather thing back there is a woven basket from Nagaland, India, and it just so happens to fit gaiwans perfectly.
That's amazing.
And Tony gave me that as well.
It looks awesome.
It's awesome, and I store 3 gaiwans.
It's practical and it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So when I was in Yixing to purchase an Yixing pot from a local craftsman, we had visited one of their shops, and they were doing gongfu on this huge table that had it was a huge like car.
Legit.
Yeah, it was legit. It basically was the entire table, and she had a tube that had all the water could drain out of into a bucket, and then so she had the Yixing, and interesting thing is that she actually used a tea bag. Yes, I know. I was a little surprised too. But she, we were all sitting there, and one of her friends was there, and my mom and we were there, and she showed us their studio where they made all of the Yixing pots and teapots, and she just took her Yixing and she just said, yeah, I don't want to clean it all the time, so I just put the tea in a tea bag, and I just put it in the Yixing, and that's how I make it. And I was like, my mind is being blown right now. How could you do this? But hers was more for practical time-saving reasons, and so that was a really kind of mind-blowing experience for me. 'Cause I'm like, I thought this was supposed to be a very traditional gongfu ceremony that we were having here.
Yeah.
But
my nose twitches at the thought.
I know. I didn't really know what to think of. I was like, I thought it was supposed to be very, following this very strict process and all that. But she did, do the heating of the teacups and the heating of the teapot, and the rinsing of the tea and pouring it over all of the cups, and washing all of them, and then taking all of the excess tea and pouring it over the teacup or the teapot. And she even had a cloth where she's like, this is the specific cloth for this teapot, and she like rubs it over the teapot. She's like, it adds to the flavor of the tea, and so she's like, you have to do it every once in a while. And it was cool to see. Mainly the table was very cool to see. And I might send a picture of that to you. But she had all the little teapots, and we had some sunflower seeds. But the table was huge. It was like a desk.
It's funny that you mentioned the cup warming thing. I don't do that.
I know you don't. It's okay. It's okay.
I honestly, and there's kind of a practical reason for that as well. Is I don't want to drink it when it's too hot.
Yeah.
So when it cools off in the cup, I consider that a benefit, not a detriment.
It like brings it down to the perfect drinking temperature almost.
It brings it down by a good 50 degrees, and I consider that to be ideal. And I don't think there are any flavor notes lost as a result of that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's more of just a traditional process, but it's summer, and I think the teacups are warm enough right now. So
the teacups are plenty warm.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like you
we're
did
entering
rinse
90-degree weather.
Yeah, it's similar to as if you did rinse them. It's about the same temperature, so I don't think you're losing too much flavor. I think you're okay.
Nope. We're good. We're good.
So, Geoff, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we can talk about some other ways that you can make tea. All right,
Ooh.
see you in a few minutes.
Hi there, I'm David.
And I'm Kate.
And we're the hosts of another Zelda podcast.
There are so many good podcasts out there, and some of them in particular concern the Legend of Zelda.
That's right, Kate, and we are another one of them. That is actually the name of our show, Another
Yes.
Zelda podcast.
And in our show in particular, we talk about some of our favorite dungeons, characters, boss battles. We have top 10 lists.
Yeah, we do deep dives on game design and production aspects of the different Zelda games.
And we talk about our own experiences. We do some review episodes, talk about our challenges, our struggles, and our victories.
That's right. Really just almost anything that has to do with Zelda, we like to talk about it. A new episode comes out every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube.
And you can also check out our episodes on our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com.
That's right. All right, we will see you there.
Okay, bye!
Hey, everyone, and we're back from our break. And before the break, we were talking about different ways to make tea, such as with a tea bag or grandpa style, kisu, and also gongfu style, which is one of Geoff's main way of making tea. And mine is usually using the kisu.
Well, correction. It's my main way when I'm at home, but I'm not always at home.
That's good.
I go outdoors sometimes.
This is good. This is healthy.
Yes.
I am not always at home. I'm a healthy individual.
I am a normal person.
I have people that I talk to.
I have people that I talk to on the internet.
They're real. I think they're real.
For real on the internet.
So when you're not at home, how do you make tea?
This sucker right here.
Okay, and what is that sucker?
That sucker is a tea tumbler. Specifically, this one is the one that's pretty much all over my Instagram feed. I don't know exactly which tumbler it is, but it's a Libra tea tumbler, and it's a 14-ouncer.
Okay.
And I just pour leaves down at the bottom and brew forever and go on my merry little way, and then I do the same thing at lunchtime.
So that looks like a double-walled glass tumbler. And there's
it's double-walled. It's glass on the outside. I believe it's a kind of plastic on the interior, so the interior doesn't shatter very easily.
yeah.
And then it has a mesh filter
at the top.
in the center there, and in theory, you could basically brew it by putting the leaves on top of the mesh filter and then tipping it upside down. And doing that. I don't do that because every time I've done it, because there's still steam rising, I've had many a brew explode on me.
Yes, I have as well. And I thought that that I had received a defective tumbler when that happened. Because having hot water explode on you is not a great feeling.
Nope.
Not great. But you use it a lot for oolongs.
I use it mainly for my morning black teas and my afternoon oolongs.
Okay.
That seems to be the routine that I've gone in, especially with my murderous commute.
Yeah, consistency is good, I guess. Right?
Yeah. I don't like change.
Change is bad.
Change bad. Consistency. Tea brewing good.
We're advanced tea drinkers, you know. So that's how you drink to go. So I used to have a glass tea tumbler. I don't remember which company I had purchased it from, but it was a similar concept where it was a small chamber with a filter. So there were two screw tops that came off. So there's the top that opens the container for the tea, and then also another container for the tea leaves at the very top, or whatever type.
The ones with the basket filter.
No, it was a screw top. So inside,
Okay.
So it was a screw top to the filter area, and then another screw top to the tumbler area. And so,
same.
And so I would always pour in the hot water and screw it on tight, and then I wouldn't be able to open it, and and then it's hot, and then I wouldn't know what to do. Or sometimes I put so much tea inside of the filter area that it wouldn't allow the water to correctly steep or to drain out of that area. So when I opened it, that's how it exploded. All of a sudden, the pressure was released, and the tea's like, "Whoa, we're free!"
Yeah.
So
I run into that a few times because in the morning I will screw up the amount of leaf to tumbler ratio.
Yeah.
Like today, I apparently filled at full expansion. The leaves took up about 2/3 of the tumbler.
wow.
And that happens all the time with the oolongs. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, it's
In general.
well, I mean, it's misleading with oolongs because they're so tiny, and you're just like, no, I need more. I need more, and so you just keep adding, and then
So you're like, 2 heaping tablespoons. That'll work. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you basically just have a cup of leaves.
Yeah.
And people are like wondering if you're smuggling in cannabis or something.
Why is it soggy?
Why is it soggy cannabis? It's not cannabis and it's not soggy. It's oolong.
Get it right.
Or woolong.
Get it right.
I don't know anymore. My world doesn't make sense.
So on different ways to make tea, that's the way you make tea to go. And right now I don't have a way to make tea to go. I just have a regular kind of like a coffee mug. And if I ever do make tea, I will make tea actually in just a tea infuser. So something like this.
Yeah.
So I'll make it at home as I'm getting ready in the morning. I'll just like throw in tea and then let it steep. And then I'll put it on top of any good old to-go coffee mug. And
explain how those work, because I think a person who's new to loose leaf will find that particular device really interesting.
Okay, so this device is great. It's really easy to use. So you put however much tea that you would like based on your taste of the strength of tea in here, and then you pour water over the tea leaves, and you let it steep for however long. And I'll pour some water in here just to show. Okay, for however long. And then once you let the tea steep, I feel like I'm a chemist over here. Once you let the tea like into this container, out of this container. Okay, so once you let the
and you were just holding beakers.
yeah. Once you let the tea steep, there is kind of like a drop that like a, how would you say it? It's a kind of a lever that like opens up all of the tea and releases all of the water, but there's also a filter in here that keeps all the tea in the upper part of this in this infuser. So if I drop this on top of a cup, the water goes in to the cup or the tumbler or wherever you want the tea to go, and then the tea leaves actually stay inside of this inside of the infuser. So it's really easy to use. I like to use it in the mornings just because I'm just like running around, and then you can just drop it in and you go do something else. And so,
well, the reason I asked you to show that is because when I was first getting into loose leaf teas back in 2006, 2007, I purchased something exactly like that at Teavana. And if it weren't for that, I probably would not have started on loose leaves as soon as I did.
Really?
Yeah, no, that was instrumental for the longest time. Pre gaiwan
Pre-gaiwan days. Yeah, it's really easy to use, and when I make iced tea, I will use this as well because it allows you to make a pretty concentrated, and there's larger ones of this as well, but it allows you to make a really concentrated tea, which is nice for making iced tea. So, anyways, that's how I make tea to go using the tea infuser.
That is perfectly acceptable to me.
Thank you. So I'm seeing here on the notes that you have a couple other ways to make tea.
When I brew sencha, I tend to use another Japanese teapot called a hohin.
Okay.
I think I'm saying that right. And the hohins are really kind of along the same, a similar concept to the kyusu, where the mesh on the interior is super fine, and that's basically so that they could catch sencha leaves, because sencha leaves, essentially, I'm hilarious.
Meme to follow.
I mean, they'll basically either clump up or cover a filter, and because the mesh filter is so super fine, it basically keeps the leaves from going through into the actual brew. Now, granted, if they expand enough, then they end up turning into mulch and blocking the filter, but that's easy to basically just pour out of the way. And the one that I got here, I actually got from a friend of mine who owns a business called Kyusu Teas, and he basically passed it on to me, kind of just as a present for recommending a tea to him. And I don't use it very often, but when I'm brewing sencha at home, that's the one I'll use, because gaiwans and sencha do not get along at all.
So you use that one exclusively for sencha?
I use that one exclusively for sencha.
Ah, okay. So the yixing that I have also on the inside has a filter, and this one was handmade, but there's a filter on the very, very inside.
Seriously?
Yep. It's a. Huh. Does yours have one?
No. I have two Yiching pots. Okay. Let me see if I can show this.
Yep, so it's
without pouring any.
It looks
like
a single serving, right? Is that a fairly small?
It's a single serving. It's only about like 4 or 5 ounces that it serves out. And this particular design is a Chishi design, and I won't go into detail exactly what that design is supposed to emulate. Right. I've already written about that subject. But anyway, there's no filter on the inside. The spout is just small enough to prevent oolong or pu'er leaves from going out the spout. I guess, because I've never actually had an issue of it pouring leaf material out, unless it happens to be like dust and detritus from the bottom.
Right. Yeah. Because the spout is actually quite small. So it's very small. So it's usually not an issue. But yeah, there is a tiny filter. It's not a mesh filter inside of this yixing. It's actually a clay filter that the maker looks like he poked dots into a layer of the clay, and he actually added it as a filter inside of the pot.
You'll also run into that with some just like traditional like British teapots. Some of them will just have a glaze filter before the spout.
Yep. And so I actually have one here. This is this is a made in Japan, but this one also has right in front of the spout on the inside a little filter to help filter out the tea.
Nice.
So I actually don't use this one very often because it's massive. I mean, how many people do I need to, probably like 8 or 10 people for this teapot? And that number of people, they don't fit in my apartment. So that's not happening.
No, I have only like one traditional teapot, and a friend of mine gave it to me as a housewarming present back in 2009 to 2010, I think.
So when you say traditional in the sense of
traditional Western teapot.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if it could be considered a traditional Western teapot because it's shaped like an elephant.
It's like a new wave teapot, maybe.
Sure. New wave works. Yeah. But it doesn't have. I don't use it very often because it doesn't have any sort of interior mesh thing to catch leaves. Okay. So if I were to use it at all, I would need to use a do-it-yourself tea bag or leaves that are large enough to basically sink at the bottom. And because it is so huge, I mean, it brews about 24 ounces.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's it. Yes.
And party of one. We've already established this. I don't really have reason to use it unless I'm... Actually, correction. I've used it a couple of times just for photographic reference because I had a blog that had a reference to an elephant in the room. And...
The only elephant is the teapot.
The only elephant I had was a teapot. So you know what? Perfect.
Yeah, there's a. I was in an antique shop and they had a teapot that was a monkey. It was shaped like a traditional, Chinese old painting style, 西游记 kind of a monkey, and
yeah.
And the lid was the head of the monkey, and it was really weird. I was like, this is not weird. Right. I can't stop looking at it, but it's weird.
Why do I feel like I need an adult when looking at this teapot?
Yeah, not feeling safe right now. But yeah, it was a really weird teapot. So another thing you had on your list, which you had mentioned when you were going through your gaiwan process, through your gongfu process, was chahai.
Chahai, right back there. I mean, I could go up and get it, but I'll just point leave it alone. Okay, maybe you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not going to assume. But what does chahai mean? I forgot to look that up.
So chahai, just from the sound of it, is like a C. So hai is C and cha is T.
Cha is T.
Right, and hai
CT.
Yeah, but it's basically where all of the tea comes together, so it's uniform before you're serving. Yeah,
right.
So that's more of like the gongfu part of the gongfu process.
Oh, okay.
Right. So if you're making it for multiple people, sometimes to serve everyone, you do 1 or 2 infusions or steeps, and you put all of that into the chahai to make sure that the tea that the first person's getting and the tea that the last person is getting is the same, and that the infusion is not different across the different pores.
Yeah, I've seen that where people to make it, like, say you have like 5 to 10 people that are at a sitting. Yeah. Somebody will basically do one steep, usually about 10 seconds, and then another steep that's about 10 seconds. So they're all receiving a steep that has similar to almost identical flavor notes, as opposed to a 15 to 20 to 30 second steep.
Yep, and I've done that before, where I've had friends over and I'm just chatting with them and making tea in the kyusu, and I'm like, oh, here you go, I'll pour you a little bit, I'll pour myself the second half, and I'm looking at the color, I'm like, so we're having different teas right now, but that's fine. And they just enjoy it. But that's with the cha hai. It's like a sea. Or, I mean, not a sea. It's a tea ocean, I guess you could say, where it just
Yeah.
kind of lets
Okay.
everything kind of come together.
That makes sense because I didn't actually start using a cha hai until how long ago? 2 years ago, two and a half years
Yeah.
ago. I finally bought one because a friend of mine gave me a strainer,
Oh, yeah, nice.
and it happens to fit on the mouth of a cha hai perfectly. So when I'm doing the pouring, it catches all the dust that may
I
have
see that
been
you use that a lot.
at the end of a gaiwan
Yeah.
brewing, and so I figured, well, fine, I might as well buy a cha hai at this point. And it's kind of been life changing, so that I don't have any. I mean, even though I don't care if there's particulate leaf matter at the bottom of my cup, but sometimes for for like empirical blogging purposes,
You want it
to be aesthetically
Yes.
pleasing, and so the cha hai comes in handy for that.
Yeah, the tea strainer actually reminds me of last year I went to my first kind of like a high tea. I had like yeah,
Oh.
so that was
I saw that
yeah,
picture.
so that was the first time I ever had high tea, and so it was a lot of more Western style, or actually English British style teas.
Yeah.
And they had kind of similar to the metal strainer or the stainless steel strainer you have now, where they make all of the tea in a teapot, or not like this style, but in this like size. And they have
Yeah.
kind of a buffet table of all the different types of teas, and they're all in larger teapots. And then they have on the table these strainers that you just showed, just sitting in front of each teapot. And so before you pour your tea, you actually put the strainer over your cup, and then you pour the tea over the strainer, and then
Yep.
it helps to strain out any of the particulates in the tea. And then so theirs is actually a strainer about this size. It's about 3 inches
Yeah.
in diameter, and then it has two handles on the side. And sometimes they're decorated, and sometimes they're not. But that's what when you showed the strainer, it actually reminded me of the high tea experience, and how they serve
And
tea.
I think that's what it's supposed to be used for, but I'm not sure. And I actually don't have one of those, even though they really do come in handy if you happen to have a teapot and mug and you're trying to do it that way. But I don't know. I don't acquire much. All of the teaware that I own has either been through friends passing things along, or they've been hand-me-downs from vendors.
Yeah, and I think by this time, once you find kind of the brewing vessel that you find yourself using more often than not, it like I know for me the kyusu, even though it is for green teas in a traditional sense, I kind of use it for everything. Just because it's
Yeah,
like
and I'm the same way with gaiwans. I'll use gaiwans for Darjeelings.
yeah, it's just comforting.
or sacrilegious enough, I used it for my oolongs from last episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I think usually once you find your own, you don't switch it around. Well, I don't switch it around too much. You kind of just have your one, and it's kind of your go-to teapot.
Yeah.
Even though there are like, I have a strainer that, I mean, it's not the best strainer, but like you just pour.
That is an ugly strainer. That has been through the ringer.
It's not the prettiest strainer, but so it's just a plain mesh like metal strainer. But the thing is,
Yeah.
for me, this is what I use when it's like just me and I feel like the need to use a strainer. But
Yeah.
but most of the times, even if there are tea leaves in the tea, I'm like, that's fine. We can all hang out together and coexist.
One of my favorite teas or favorite types of tea to brew grandpa style, which is going back to an earlier category.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Taiwanese white teas. They tend to be like whole leaf, and the leaves sink rather quickly, even quicker than oolong leaves. And so I'll just drop those in a mug, and they actually get better the longer you steep them for, even at boiling. I mean, 10 minutes, water at a boil, put it in, done, wait a little while. And for the longest time, when I had a huge bag of, what was it called? Was it Lao Shu? Whatever. I don't remember what the Chinese name was for it. But I had this Taiwanese white tea, and I would take a chalice that was shaped like a cartoon Chewbacca, and I would just put the leaves at the bottom of it, and then just wait and then drink out of Chewbacca's half-formed skull.
Nice. So whichever way to just steep and enjoy the tea.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's whatever.
Whatever. Yeah.
It's whatever.
Yep. And
Gong Fu. It's whatever.
yeah, and I don't own a gaiwan. Yeah, I don't own a gaiwan because usually when I drink tea, it's either grandpa style because it's just that's just kind of the casual way of drinking it, or we're just putting it in there's a lot of these like smaller porcelain style teapots that are about the size of this kyushu, so it's about 5 inches in diameter and about 3 inches tall. So it's a fairly small teapot. And so when I'm at home and my mom and I are drinking different types of oolongs or pu'ers, we just make it in that teapot. And so most people that I know here, they actually don't own a gaiwan. It's probably it's more common actually with when I visit. We used to visit with Chinese suppliers, and they would have you come into their office. They would have the whole gong fu tea set. When you're talking about like buying products from them or whatnot. And this isn't a tea supplier. This is just any supplier. They have different. They almost always have a gong fu tea set because it's something to do while you're talking. So you're not sitting there and just talking directly. They're like doing something, and it helps break up the energy a little bit, which is kind of nice. But yeah, I actually don't own a gaiwan, and that might be my next purchase. It might be a clear one.
That does surprise me, but at the same time doesn't. But because, I've actually never run into anyone from China or Taiwan that uses a gaiwan commonly. Yeah. Most of the time, it's just when they're trying to display a tea that they're hawking. And when they're drinking a tea just by themselves, they're using either just a filter device of some sort, or they're doing it grandpa style. Yeah. Particularly if it's a show pu'er. A friend of mine was telling me that show pu'er actually was designed specifically to not only mimic what sheng pu'er is like after 20 or so years, but also that it lends better to a grandpa style brew that goes forever, as opposed to doing it gong fu with multiple steeps or whatever.
It's low maintenance. It's a low maintenance tea.
It is, and it does. If it's a good show pu'er, it actually does get better the longer you steep it for.
And to that point, I guess for me, I was surprised getting more and more into reading about different tea blogs and whatnot, how many people in the U.S. use a gaiwan. And
I'm one of them.
That was the thing that surprised me the most. I'm like, oh wow, this is a very I think drinking tea in China is just on an everyday basis is kind of like a really casual thing. Like, oh yeah, throw some tea in a teacup, pour some water over it, and you got tea. Like it's a very casual kind of thing. So that was probably the most surprising thing for me of all the gaiwans. So for me, I mean, I might be purchasing my first gaiwan in a while. So
they're not expensive.
No, yeah.
I mean, unless you're getting like one of those ornate ones. I've got an ornate one from Yunnan, which I'm guessing is probably about $40 or $50. But a friend of mine passed it on to me because they had no more room for it because they had too many gaiwans.
What a problem!
and it's really cool. And as a fellow dragon child, you'd appreciate it because it's got this dragon that basically surrounds the edge.
Oh,
of
that's
it.
Cool. Yeah.
It's cool.
It's so cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah. So Geoff, we covered a few of the topics that we wanted to cover in terms of ways to make tea. I know there's a few others, and we might do like a part 2 on ways to make tea, or even do a future couple like deep dives into some of the tea ceremonies. There is, there's this long pot tea ceremony that it's almost like a copper teapot, and it has a super long spout, and it like you swing it around, and then the tea ceremony is you pour it from like many feet away from the table, and you have to like stop and pour very accurately. So maybe we can do some deep dives into different types of tea ceremonies.
I've never actually attended that kind of ceremony, and I've never attended a Japanese tea ceremony, so I don't know much on the subject. I mean, I would have to look into it a bit more. I mean, I've had like matcha made for me, but I've not actually been to a cha-no-yu ceremony or dressed up in a kimono-esque outfit.
And for our Chicago listeners, there's actually a Japanese tea ceremony at U of I in Urbana, and there's a tea house there and a Japanese tea garden, and they offer Japanese tea ceremonies there, which is pretty cool. So this, I think we covered a lot of fun kind of different ways to make tea. Gotta say, still gonna stick with my kisu for making tea.
Yeah, and tomorrow I'm gonna be rocking the tumbler. I actually got a new one from Libra Tea as a review sample.
Oh, nice!
And I actually need to do a YouTube video on that one because this sucker, even though it's gone through many brews over the last 3 or 4 years, I might actually need to retire it soon because the inner lining is starting to leak in the outer lining. Yeah. But that's only because I've used it every day for the last 4 years. No other tumbler has lasted me this long.
Not bad. 4 years, going strong.
Not bad, man.
Awesome.
Going strong.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun, and I'll catch you next week, and we can talk more on tea.
Indeed.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, bye.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes, YouTube, and Google Play. This helps other listeners find our show, and if you'd like, please leave us a review. Thanks!